Vollzeit gearbeitet. Ja, machen wir alle.
Ready? Yes. Nice. Do you all have drinks? Yeah. I mean, we're going to have a break in between all the talks, but just to be sure. So welcome to our meetup. We're the Social Developers Club. Has anyone already been to one of our meetups or events? Nice, like half of you, cool. So welcome to all the newbies. We are really happy to have you there. This is kind of us, but not everyone. So Sabrina, one of our speakers today too, and we founded the Social Developers Club to bring more diversity into tech and also inclusion. So this is like our main focus goes to focus on inclusion, and we are just a platform for everyone interested in tech, already a developer or not. We just want to bring you guys together, have a good time together. So we are doing meetups like today, but also a conference. Once a year. You'll get updated on this too on our socials or in the meetup group, and also workshops, mainly for kids, but also sometimes for adults. Then we also, you know this, right? Okay. We will have talks today, but also networking part afterwards or in between. And this is where our Pac-Man circle comes in. This is like a concept, you know, when you all stand in groups together and talk, always make sure to make little space, like the mouth of the Pac-Man, so people can always come and join you. This makes sense, right? Okay, nice. And also, we just set up our first live stream today, and we're also going to make pictures. And if you don't want to be on the pictures, let me know. Then you get a little sticker from me. And even if we take pictures, they're not going to be published if you have a sticker. Yeah, it's not, just let me know after the first talk, then you get one. All right, I think, that's almost about it. So this is our socials. Feel free to share everything, tag us. We're really happy to spread the word about this cool event today. And also we just started a new Discord channel. So you have like 2 seconds now to scan this, but let me know or post it in the meetup group afterwards. Then you can check out our new Discord channel. There's not a lot happening right now, but probably soon. And also thank you to our host today, which is Co-working Space. We're so happy to be here again. So I'm giving the word to Chrissy.
Okay, a very warm welcome also from my side. My name is Christina. I'm the co-working space manager here from the Code Working Space, and as you already hear it, Code Working. So we are basically for the IT and digital workers. And if you are happy here in our space and think it's really cozy and really cool and really nice, maybe in the future you're looking for a desk or just a daily drop-in or something else for a group or for your own, just let me know. Just talk to me in the break or send me an email afterwards. We are really excited for all the speakers today and tonight, and we are really happy to have you all here and wish you a wonderful evening. And now I think I hand over to Saskia Bader, who will present the topic Equal Opportunities in the Digital World and Your Impact as a Developer.
Welcome to this talk. I'm very excited to have you here. Did you know that 15% of the world population have some kind of disability? That means that up to 15% of people who want to use your website or app or software may not be able to because of some kind of accessibility issue. Hi, I'm Saskia. I'm a web developer myself for over 10 years. I have given lots of talks about this topic, and I really care about this because I also know it from the user's perspective, because I have a visual impairment. I only see roughly 10%. What will you learn tonight in my talk? First of all, we go through your impact or our impact and our responsibility as developers. Then we will look at what benefits do companies have if they focus on improving accessibility of their websites and products. And at the end, we'll have some practical tips that many of you already know. They're just basics, but that managers, developers, and user interface or web designers can do to make their offerings, their digital products more accessible. Our impact as developers can be nicely seen at a little story I have for you. Imagine that you're blind and that you have struggled to find your first job, and you have taken over a year now. But today is the day. You have your first work day at your new company. So you ask your manager, hey, what's my first task in this new role? And they say, well, familiarize yourself with the software that you'll be using every single day. And so you sit down, start your screen reader, and start the software. In the first scenario, you hear nothing. Your screen reader tells you nothing. So you Google and find some tutorials, but they're just nice upbeat background music and no one talking. So you think it may be just like some screenshots, but without any speech over it. So you search and search even more. Finally, you found some text document explaining the software. It says, please click on the green button with the start symbol. Well, you can't see any buttons or symbols. So after a couple more hours of trial and error, you say to your manager, sorry, this software is not accessible to us, to me. Well, they then say, I'm sorry, I can't really help you. This software is needed to do this job. So after only a couple hours, you pack your bag and have to go home again and start the job search all anew because you can't do this exact role. You think, I'm qualified, I have all that they want, but yet I have to go home now, and you're really disappointed. But then the other scenario is you sit down at the same desk and log in and start your screen reader, start the software, and it says, welcome, please press the enter key to activate the start button. Then it says, please type in your login information. And then you do that, and then it welcomes you customers, projects, invoices, whatever you do in your work. And you, because you're so tech savvy, can familiarize yourself with the software so easily that you do it quicker than anyone else before at the company. And you go to your manager and say, hey, I've already figured everything out. And they say, great, we want to just start you on this new exciting project in a couple days. But now we can start today. You go home excited and feeling accomplished. And on the underground, you think about how it would be if the software was not accessible for you. But then you don't have much time to think about that because you want to decide on which restaurant you want to invite your friends to celebrate your bright new future. So, who made the difference? It wasn't the boss, it wasn't you as the employee, it were the developers and all the people who made that software, who decided, who made through their actions the decision, if you could do the job and have your bright, exciting new future, or if you had to go home all deflated and disappointed. The digital world is really in so many areas, be it education, be it work, social connections, so many things. That means that not having things accessible in the digital world can really make an impact to someone's real life world. We, as developers and other creators of the digital world, can make sure that things are as accessible as possible. We can follow the guidelines, we can do testing and much more. By that, we really impact if people can do their new jobs, if people can do their school assignments that they have to use a specific software for, if they can search for a solution to their problem on a specialized website. So it is the responsibility of us web and software developers, managers, designers, and other people in the IT industry to make the digital world a more accessible place for everyone. Now, many clients and managers may think, oh, that's just so much extra time investment. But I have a little story that shows it's really worth it. At the beginning of the mobile phone era, you could get a mobile phone with a screen reader on, but the screen reader alone would cost you 4,000 euros. And you would have to ask your health insurance to do that. And if you got it, you were really lucky, then it could only do mail, contacts, phone, and address book, and those really basic things. No apps or extra features that were on the phone. And then Apple came along. I'm not an Apple fan girl, but they had things like free screen reader, not 4,000 euros. Or they had integration with hearing aids and much more. So where did all my blind friends go to? They went not to the 4,000 euro smartphone. They went to all get iPhones. So this shows that if you're the first in your industry or in your market who focuses on accessibility, it can give you really loyal customers, because what's now all the other smartphone manufacturers have caught up, but all my blind and visually impaired friends, they still buy iPhones out of habit. So managers or customers or other people may think, oh, we don't have anyone qualified for this. It takes just so much time. Or my favorite, we can do this at the end of the project. But who of you has still lots of time left over when the deadline is looming near? So it may be extra time and energy investment, but it can be really worth it, because improving accessibility often also improves general usability. It makes users happy, and those, for example, who got a trial version of your software but then couldn't really use it, they wanted to buy your software, but now they can't buy it, so you could really miss out on customers and on revenue. Now, in the last section of my talk, we'll talk about how we can make things more accessible. If you are a tech leader, a product or a project manager, you can make sure that there's enough time budget in the project plan. You can train your teams on this topic, for example, by inviting me to give this talk at your company, or you can add accessibility testing to your general quality assurance or usability testing processes. Designers, be it UI designers for software or web designers, you can focus on things like, is there enough contrast between the text and the background? Things like, is the font legible? For example, if you have like a really fancy font but that isn't really readable. Some people may not, especially if they have like a reading problem, they can't maybe have issues to distinguish between an I and an L and things like that. And you can, of course, just make sure that everything is really nicely structured, so that people also who may just have are not very much acquainted with the computers or the internet, or who have some other disabilities, can easily know where they are and where they're going. Developers. One of the things that developers can definitely do, what really frustrates me sometimes, I fill out a form and then I miss something, and then it pops up a little error message, but it goes away after 3 or 4 seconds, and you didn't fill, and then I couldn't finish reading it because it took a bit longer. Things like that, or that that buttons have a label. Otherwise, screen readers may just read clickable button, and that's very informative. Or that images that are not just there for decoration have alternative text. For example, that reads the description of the image. And much more that, like, if you have some kind of validation or like captcha, like type in the letters that you see, that you, for example, also have an audio version of that. Remember, we're all getting older, so if you're not yet motivated to develop things more accessible for other people, think of the future you who may have issues with your eyesight getting worse or your hearing getting worse. So do it for the future you. Let's open digital doors for others who may be locked out of the benefits of the digital world currently and are waiting for you to open the doors for them. Thank you for your attention and for so many of you who have interest in this topic. I'm happy to answer your questions and all of those Germans here. I'm building up an online community about this topic, but also about like overcoming hurdles and achieving your goals. That's my other topic that I speak on. So I have some flyers here if you're interested. And of course, if you want me, I'm also happy to speak at other companies or events. Thank you very much. You're amazing.
Really great insights. Thank you. We have some time for questions, if you have any.
I can't promise that I can perfectly answer them, but I'll give my best.
So I have a question about automation. So what kind of frameworks or systems exist to test actually websites for accessibility?
I heard that there are like that some of the like automated test frameworks have this built in, but this is nothing that I personally worked with before. So I'm sure there's some other specialists, but definitely some tools you use to write automated testing have this also included.
Okay, thank you.
And no worries, the next talk will also get deeper into. Not okay.
I would
Just
give
kidding.
Exactly the same answer because I do test it myself.
Any other questions? Just for the live stream.
I was just wondering, can you estimate how big the complexity would grow by implementing the accessibility features? Is it something that's hard to do, or is it pretty easy nowadays?
It depends. Like if you first do, for example, a design and everything, and then you focus on accessibility, you may have to redo things like contrast or like labels and stuff. But if you do it from the beginning, I'm just a developer, not a project manager, so I don't have that much experience. But I think if you start from the beginning with a focus on it and to implement the guidelines, like the web content accessibility guidelines, for example, then it's not that hard, at least in the projects that I worked on so far.
Okay, thank you.
I think one last question would be. Yeah? Can you? No. Thanks.
Hi, I was just curious if when you look on to visiting new places and you want to know beforehand if the place is accessible or not. So when you go to websites, what kind of information on a website is helpful to put in to know what kind of accessibility services are available?
Well, for different places like that I travel to, I often look, okay, where's the train connection, or for example, airports when they have like maps, I try to zoom into them so I can read them and try prepare beforehand where I have to go. But for me personally, I don't have so much, like I don't have so many accessibility needs when I go to like physical places, as long as I take enough time to find my way. So I always take like at least half an hour to an hour to, if I get lost for a moment.
No, I'm good.
No? Right, thank you. Last chance? Okay, Saskia will be here anyways for a drink, I think, or maybe a snack.
Yeah.
And this is what I want also invite you to. We'll have a short break, so grab a drink, maybe a snack, and then we'll see each other back in like 10 minutes. We'll let you know. Richtig cool, danke dir.
Okay, I think I just start, and Julia will probably come in again now, as I said. Woo!
Are you going to introduce yourself?
No, I just introduced you coming back. But then I'm going to introduce myself as well now.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Oh, you want to say something?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, just
Now
I don't know. But yeah, thanks for coming back.
For not leaving.
I want to learn more about it. We're going to go a little bit more in the technical depth. So we're going to look at a website, right? And see how we can make it more accessible. Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you. Yes, so also thanks to Saskia, who already very well introduced the topic accessibility. I really liked it, so it's a good start for this talk, actually. Yeah, my talk is called From Zero to Accessible, and what we're going to do is I show you a little website, so a little application, and then some small things you can do to improve the accessibility of the website, so we already get an all-over accessible website. Here's the introduction I just told you about. So, my name is Sabrina, and for those who maybe know me for longer, my nickname is Beanie. So that's why on social media you can find me all with all the Beanie codes. Actually, or on the Social Developers Club page as well. I'm a software engineer at UB Labs, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Social Developers Club, and I'm also a GDE in web technologies, mostly for speaking about accessibility. So that's the topic. Right. Okay, so just to cover like the small basics about accessibility, what it actually is, there's just one sentence I would like to introduce to you, is that accessibility, and especially accessibility in terms of web development, means that all websites should be accessible to everyone in the same way.
So that's like the kind of difficulty here, because people think, okay, if it's accessible in some way, then it's already enough. But it should be accessible to whoever is using the website and whatever difficulties they might have, whatever disabilities they might have, if they have any impairments, in the same way to a person like this, like to a person who does not suffer from anything or who does not have any difficulties or barriers to enter a website, who is like basically using it in the normal way. To give you a real life example. Consider yourself, or think of yourself entering a building, and you want to go to the second floor. Okay, so you take the stairs because there are stairs and there's no difficulty for you to enter that. Now imagine yourself using a wheelchair, because I hope not, but maybe you had an accident, or maybe you always need a wheelchair. There's no way for you to enter the second floor if there are only stairs. But if there's an elevator or some alternative to the stairs, which make it accessible in the same way, you will have it easier to access the second floor, or you can actually even just access the second floor. And also, it's like Saskia said, it's not just about making it accessible for everyone, it's also making everyone's life easier. So now maybe you had a long day and you've just been for a run and you really don't want to take any stairs anymore because the second floor is really high. You have an elevator, so it's a plus also that makes your life easier in these circumstances. Then consider another situation. Maybe there's just an event at the second floor, like this one, but not like this one because you don't really care about the event. So it's an event you were thinking about going, but maybe in the end you don't want to go. So it's actually not that important. So the thing I want to say is it's not that important to you if there are stairs or an elevator, because if you're not going, it doesn't make a difference. Now take another situation. You're living in an area and there's just one grocery store. And that grocery store is inside that building on the second floor. So here again, that would make a difference because you would need to buy groceries to have food available at home. So again, the situation, this is like considering websites. People are often saying, well, I add accessibility in the end, it's not that important. Maybe for this website it's not important, but maybe for a special feature that should be used by everyone, it is important, or for certain areas it is important, or for certain like topics on the web, it is important to have it accessible to everyone. To go to the websites, again, considering the stairs and the elevator, you can compare that a bit to a computer mouse and the keyboard. So you should be able to access all content on a website, thinking of widgets and of images and text by keyboard in the same way you access it by keyboard, by a computer mouse. This reason, for example, like I broke my shoulder a few years ago. People who went to the first conference might know. And it was really hard for me for weeks and months to actually do that movement with my hand because I couldn't like move my upper part of the body. So I wasn't able to use a computer mouse or to click on something. So there are a lot of people who suffer from that from every day. So this is the reason why we often say in accessibility, please make it keyboard accessible, because for me it was way easier to tap with a keyboard or to use like little keys on the keyboard than to use the mouse because the rotation is very difficult. Okay, so now that we covered that, let's start with the project and the website we're gonna look at. It's a very simple one because we want to look at the simple basics that we can cover to make it more accessible. It's a website about homes where it's like a little team introduction. Don't read the text because it's Lormöpsen. And then we have homes that we sell here. So we have 2 homes available, and that might be your new home here. Well, overall, this website doesn't look like it's that inaccessible. So there's like, I think most of you can read the text. You know, designers would maybe go deeper and be like, oh, I like this color, I would change that color. However, I think most of the people can read everything, and it doesn't look at the first glimpse like it's so inaccessible. Let's have a look at the code. I said it's a basic one, so I just gave you a bit of a snippet from the code. So most of the code is like that. So you have a lot of div elements, and you style them by CSS. So you put classes and IDs, and with the IDs, actually, it gets a bit easier to read because you feel like, oh, the header, of course my ID, the header, but then I have a main part. Oh, there's my div with the ID of the main part. So from code perspective, some developers I know will say, it works, it looks good on my website, everyone can use it, so everyone can access it. And also you can read it well because it's well structured and like you get the important parts of it. Now coming to the tools, I think someone asked about the testing. You. Yeah, Lighthouse is a tool that is in Chrome DevTools with which you can do some audits on a website, also accessibility audits and like performance analysis as well. And for those who are not so much into coding, if you go on a website and do right-click, it will open up the developer tools. So, and there is like this tool, Lighthouse. It will look like this. So I did an accessibility audit with this website, and you actually, yeah, it pops up here, the Lighthouse, and then you click on Analyze Accessibility. I did the desktop version here, and it gives us a score of 81. Who thinks that's good? I would like, you know why you don't think it's good? Because it's already orange. I bet, I bet if it would be green, everyone would blow 80%, let's give it a chance. So they already tell you it's not good. Though 80%, you know, it's better than nothing, but yeah. The good thing is they already tell you like what's wrong on your website. So they give you advices and help you a bit to improve your website accessibility. But also be careful with these kind of tools because they cannot test everything. Like they can look if your elements are in the right order, and they cannot look if your elements are in the right order. Not. I did a mistake in saying it before. But what they can do is check if the elements have the right roles, properties, if the contrast is right, like from the foreground and the background, so the text on the background, for example. So like some things they can test automatically, this will work. But then they tell you at the button, please check what kind of things you have to test by yourself, like by hand. Okay, so we want to improve this now to have 100%. By covering just some basics. Let's check out the screen reader before. I used VoiceOver for this one, just a recommendation, like if it's from Apple, I usually do that on Safari because it doesn't work so good with other browsers. So, but I'm also more using Chrome and other, so it's a bit of a mixture, but you can also use like Chromebox for Chrome, for example. I think the tone is not the best, so I hope, also, it's not. I hope you can read it at the bottom. Oh, it's actually there. Okay. Let's just make a bit more. Maybe. Let's see. Okay, I think from somewhere from here next. This is the image better. See, I told you you don't have to read it, he will read it out for you now.
Selected. Loren Zoom Logo P in the image. Homes main for you about US. Foto 1.511.600 Zeilen. Foto 1.618.300.373.404.
Okay, so you see there's a lot of work to do here. Like some things are already working, but some other parts are like not really making sense at the moment. And also the image part is like really messed up. So what he's basically doing is like he's reading out the source of the image. And maybe some of you already know why, but I will also show you in a minute. So let's start some refactoring. I will show some examples by code, but also some examples I will just show you in an explanatory way. Who knows what semantic HTML is? Okay, so let's start with what semantic actually is. And to make a better understanding of that, let's start with a joke. No, I don't laugh. No, maybe you don't think it's funny. So what did the mayonnaise say when someone opened the fridge or the refrigerator? Any guessings? Okay. So he said, close the door, I'm dressing. So the thing here is that dressing has a double meaning. So it is dressing, mayonnaise you put on a salad, but also like dressing means changing clothes, for example. And so why I want to show you this, or why I actually show you this, is this word has a meaning. And in this case, even it has two meanings. And depending on the context, you can see the meaning here. And in the same way, like words in every language have a meaning, and sometimes even people are fighting about the meaning somehow. Each HTML element in HTML5 does have a meaning and does have its place to put inside the code. And for all of you who didn't get the joke, this is the sign you've been waiting for. Okay, so let's have a look again at the code I showed you before, where everything is structured in the div elements. Besides that, we have an image here. And when we refactor this one now to be more semantically, we can use the HTML5 elements and tags. So you can see now this is basically doing the same thing, yeah, just that we use HTML5 semantic elements here. So instead of saying, oh, we have a div, which doesn't have any meaning inside the accessibility API. So it's just a container where you put elements inside and then you can like structure things or do some layout. Besides that, a div doesn't have any meaning. But here, this is a header. And suddenly we have a tag for that, which is called header, so we can use it. And also navigation, like you don't have to put a div ID or like say ID nav, so everyone knows it's a navigation. We do have a navigation. So when you put those kind of semantic tags, the screen reader will know that at the moment it enters this part of the website that it's currently on a navigation, and it will announce that to the user and say, you're on a navigation. And then it will give you like the different, for all of you who don't know what's navigation, it's always like, for example, the upper part of a website where you like click on and then you go to different sites. Then also like here, for example, the P tag, a paragraph is always a thing that tells you there's text or some more information. So please consider always, like, before you use a div tag or a span, just always think, is there actually an element that has a semantic that I can use first? And just the last case, when you cannot find anything that fits, also consider using it the right way, of course. Then you can check if you probably just need a div element at that point. Okay. Then I just told you about the image, which is the only one we have to label here because we don't have button or links. So what we're missing is the alt text. And I think Saskia already told you about it. Alternative text is super important for images. There are different use cases where you probably leave that open and all of that thing. I have a whole talk about that actually. But in this case at our website, it is important that we put the alternative text and give some explanation on what you see on the image. Because for people who cannot see what's on your website or what's the image displaying, they have no idea what's on there. And also, you've just seen it, that some screen readers will just read out the source. And it's super annoying and doesn't give any information. So please describe the image. Also, if your image is broken, it makes sense to have an alternative text display. Okay, so we've come far. The next thing is the tab order. Does anyone know who's the tab order? Like what's tabbing? I know you know that. Okay, so imagine entering a website and then yes, there's one key on your keyboard, you press tab, 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 tab. And by that you want to go through all the content actually. But what happens often is, considering that, the most native way to implement tab order is the elements order. And what people are doing is often they write some HTML, and then we have CSS, and we position our elements where we want to have them, and then we're done, and it looks good, and that's the output we want to have, and we don't think about it any longer. But the thing is, you should always put the elements on the side the way you would actually go through the website. So it should always be like left to right and top to bottom. And please consider putting your elements in the order the same way. Okay, another example for that. Imagine you have this burger. If you're vegetarian or vegan, just put the cheese and the bacon aside, and then of course it's a veggie burger. Yeah, so you know how burgers actually always have the same structure. You have the bread, and then you have your ingredients, probably in a certain order, like, I don't know if you want a cucumber. I know people are like, sometimes they don't want that. But you put the ingredients on it, and then you have bread again. You eat it, and you get some certain kind of taste. So this is like the output. It's done. You don't actually care about the way the elements are put, but you want that kind of taste in the end. That's what's important. Now let's look at this burger. So we restructure our burger, and considering that as a different tab order. Okay, now let's put the onion at the top and put the tomatoes. Then we have the bread. Then we have the salad and the patty and the bread. And at the bottom there's the cucumbers. So if we take a bite of that now, I think all of you who made it, it will be very difficult. And also your fingers and maybe you like get some parts will fall down on the floor. But the thing is, if you make it, even if you cut it or something like that, and eat it then, it will have the same taste. So, I mean, if you never saw that burger before, maybe you would even think that's okay, you know? You would think, okay, let's always do burger like that. But the thing is, it's way easier to eat, and it's just the way you would put it, and it's just like the same outcome, but in a way, in a way that it's like actually has more functionality. So that's the thing about tab order as well. If you can put the elements the way you like and have the same output, but the functionality and the way it works on the website, you make your life way more complex if you do that and position everything with CSS. Okay, so let's come to the last one, contrast. This is the site when you have a contrast loss. So like, for example, this gray star. You will see that the text you have, maybe you can even read it a little bit, but it's getting harder to read now, right? Also, same thing happens like if this screen would be broken and maybe you don't see everything so well on this one, or maybe the lights would be really strong, and there can be certain situations where contrast is super important on a website, and it helps actually user to make sure that the users can always read everything. I think cautious there's blurry content now for anyone who don't want to see it. Okay, so this is the same thing with blurry content. I told you so. Imagine, like, this is nothing where people would say the 15% of people who has a disability. In this case, this is just me not wearing my glasses. This is probably, I don't know how many people have a visual impairment at the moment, but this is a really large number. So blurry content is a thing as well, and you see that you don't see the content. That's the main thing. Maybe you think like, oh, whatever is that about contrast, but I will show you in a minute. So again, for the Lighthouse tool, when you go there, it told us background and foreground colors do not have sufficient contrast. So you can go there and see which elements actually do not have sufficient contrast, so the foreground and background. You can select the element there, and from there on, it will guide you to the element inside the DOM tree. So I think we're here now. And if you go in there and select the H2, you can, down here, see that there's the color of the font you're using. And there you can select it on the little pixel, and it actually gives you a hint here saying contrast ratio is not enough. And clicking there on the contrast, it actually helps you to improve it. Here, you have this little refresh button, you see? And if you click on it, it will automatically improve the contrast of your font there, of the text, of the text you're using on the website, and you can copy the color code and use it inside your CSS. So let's do that. So we improved it already now. So make sure to copy it and put it in your CSS. Also, make sure, I know, I hear the designer scream, no, we don't want that color, we want the other color. That's something Saskia told you about. Started right from the design process. Like, don't build up everything, say yes to everything the designer does, sorry if there are any designers, and then in the end, you see the website and someone says, oh, you have to make it accessible because it's better, first of all, but also maybe by law, you'd never know. And then you have to redo also all the colors you chose, maybe for your company or for that certain client project. Okay, so we improved all of that. Then let's do the font size. Whom of you can read this? I know I have the best screenshots. So the next thing with font size is make sure that the text is always easy to read, which is, I know that some people start like giving, like we have headings and they do have a certain font size, and sometimes people prefer it because of the design to make them a bit smaller. That's fine. But then there's like the relative font size. So you start to think, okay, if the font, like if my heading is smaller, then my main text on the website needs to be smaller. And then I maybe have some elements, the button, I want them to be smaller than my main text. And then I want my links to be different. And you end up at some place on your application or website where the font is like too small. And then you argue like, oh, it looks better that way. And I don't know if people will be able to read it because you can read the rest, and I don't know. I had that kind of arguments already. However, it's getting difficult at some point. So make sure that either you provide a bigger font size, which I prefer because size matters here. I know. No, but it's actually, you save some time if you just put it in a bigger font size right from the beginning, or just think of the 16 pixel main text font size, and then you adjust everything else like relative to that. Don't use 16 pixel, use 1 EM. Thank you. But also make sure that you can zoom the text. So make sure that you can zoom into 200% and zoom off, because then at some point it might make sense to say, okay, I can use some smaller font size here and there, but at least the people can zoom in. Which is a good argument, but here also, at some point, we all get older. And now imagine you have to sit down with your grandmother explaining her how to zoom in a website. So there are like different approaches, but still, I think having a certain font size makes sense in some points, that it's also easier for the user to access and use the website. Okay, so now that we've done all of that, let's have a look at the final refactored project. So this is other contrast, so new colors on the website. We made a bigger font size. The design looks a bit different. Might be pros and cons about it, but that's fine. The designer can fix this and that. No. So yeah, you see that everything is has a bit more contrast, and the colors are way more darker actually with the light background. And then also you will see with the screen reader soon that the elements are aligned in a different way. Now with the contrast loss again, you see that it's easier to read. Like you have more contrast, and also the font size is way bigger. So even if there are like difficulties with the lights, or if there's like difficulties with the way to see the content, you will have the way to make it easier for people. And now see at the blurry content. You can see that looking longer at it, it's still difficult to read, but it's some partly you can read it. And putting more contrast and more contrast, you will see that it's even easier to read. So thinking of some scenarios like, I often like to say, like, you want to go to the hospital and you grab the app, which we everyone know to show you the way. And you cannot see anything because you just had an accident and lost your glasses. That would be an opportunity to give a way for people, like in whatever situation they are, to even access that content in some way. Because I know if you have an emergency, you will try to see something. So even if you say like, oh, I can still not read it that good, you can read it a bit better than before. And with the Lighthouse tool, you see 100% accessibility. So yeah, we passed all our audits. We did some manual audits as well, so we refactored a lot. And now let's see if you load the video. The screen reader. I start here. So.
To click this button, Level 1, Homesmail von Grün, about houses. You are on heading Level 2, about US. You are currently on the team of home is made for you standing on a small mountain looking at the sunset image. New line. Exploren jetzt touristic Fachgebiet und the courses Quiz heading level 2. Homes. You are currently on a button to click this button. Heading level 3. Home 1. Loren jetzt in easy Reparatur. Heading level 3. Home 2. New line. White Spurt hat Kettenruf. Balkon in Garden image. Selected. Orbit. About US houses.
Okay, you can see now that he's actually finally reading out some description about the images. Also, what we refactored here is like the headings. So before we had a heading 3 at the top, now we have a heading 1 at the top. And we do have a heading 2 here, which was a heading 2 before. Yeah, it was a heading 2 actually. No, heading 1. This was a heading 1. However, don't get confused, I stop here. I just want to say the important part is try to have only one heading with level 1, so H1 at the top of your website, because that's the main heading that gives the information what your website is about. Because users often think, okay, because heading 1 has a bigger font size or H2 has a smaller one, we can put it wherever we want to do, we want to put it. But there's a sense behind headings as well. Like heading 1 tells the person entering your website, what is your website about? Like, what website is it? So it should be this heading 1 at the top or wherever you put it on your website that has the main information, and it should only be 1. And all things below that, it's a structured tree. You have the heading 2, that's the next section, and inside the heading 2 section, you can put the H3 and so on. You can still style all things with HTML, with CSS. Yes, so this is also an important part we improved. Okay, so final tips for you. I think Saskia already said it. Start building accessible right from the beginning, because later it's very painful, and just do it right from the beginning. Try to do your best and try to convince others to do it as well, because otherwise it will be very painful. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions already? I'm just going to toss it, okay?
Oh, expensive.
Hey, thanks a lot. Great talk. I have a question about semantic HTML, which I feel is always kind of tricky to answer. And I heard a lot of different answers for this. Maybe, so I'm curious what you would say. The section and the article tag.
I knew it. I was thinking, hopefully it's not. Yeah, I knew it. Yes. Want to say more? No?
Yeah, the section and the article. When to choose which?
Okay, so the problem about the section and the article is you can put each other inside the other one. So I always also suffer with this one, because I wasn't really sure about how to put them in either way. So thinking of the section, you can enter a website, and like I just showed you, you can have different sections. So in this case, it would make sense to say, okay, this is a section, I put the section tag. When I think of an article, I think of a newspaper. So I think of what would a newspaper look like from content-wise, the way I would structure it. So like you have an article on a website, and then there are different sections inside structuring this article. And what we always say, like if you read the MDM docs, it says, if you can use the whole article and put it totally somewhere else, then you use article. If the section belongs to this certain part here, and you cannot put it on another website in the whole, then it should be a section. So this is like the way I usually handle that. Like I look at the content, and if the whole content can be on a total different subdomain or website or whatever, then I would probably use the article. Then also, like, if not, if I could just, like, if the section needs to be in some certain context on that side, I would probably use a section. Does that help in some way?
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Okay.
Great, try my best. Another question? Yeah.
Well.
Oh, you had a I know.
Sorry. So if I want to convince my client to introduce 3 accessibility features into our app, I'm figuring image descriptions would be probably the first one. What I mean, you already mentioned some, but what else can I tell them that they have to do to make their app more accessible?
Yeah, good point. So first of all, I would tell them accessibility is no feature. Like,
Got me.
If you like, there's a quote by I just forgot. But however, there's a quote that says that accessibility is actually basically the whole web is accessible by default. It's just people that break it. Like the way we implement it is not the right way. So I would say, of course, alternative text, but that's under a bigger umbrella that's called labeling. So also buttons, for example, need a right labeling. So like Saskia said before, if you use a button and it says click me, what does the button do if I don't see where it is? So
is a label enough, or do you recommend putting the description on the button?
I would recommend putting the description on the button because it just makes sense in the way of accessibility should be for all people in the same way. Also, it improves the usability for everyone. So it's not just about for people who are using a screen reader. But you can, the thing about buttons is they have a content between the opening and the closing tag. And I see a lot of people like, oh, I have to add accessibility, so I put an area label. Why? So they have a content, and you can just say what the button is doing inside this content, which is the best way, I think. If there's really no other way, like if you click this button, it will open that and that, and if like it's really complex, you can put an area label, and then probably it makes sense. But try to use descriptive text inside the content already. Yeah. So the other part is, of course, the contrast. So I would really take care of the contrast, like I said. Also, if you start a client project, try to check. There's also a contrast checker in the dev tools, but you can, I think in Figma, when the designer starts, there's also actually accessibility tools. And I would always take care that that's working right from the beginning, because if you have a huge application, it's really getting painful to change all the colors in the different ones.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome because it's easier to tell my designer to
to do
instead
that.
of telling the client to spend another $100,000 on changing the design.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
the font size. Take care of the font size.
Okay, I'll definitely tell them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you first for the talk. Thank you. I have 3 questions. First, semantic, and how that can help to reach more audience. Is that possible? Using semantic tool. Second question is any way to know like that color match with this color in this application, like the color matching. Most of the big companies like Google, Microsoft, they're using 3-4 colors and they match between those colors, not more, not less. The third question is the button can has description and also can have icon, right? So is it better to have icon as well or no?
Okay.
Well, thank you. I hope you still remember my question.
The first question, actually, I do. Yeah, right, the semantic. Yes, of course, like semantic, like the way I showed already, it improves the way your website is accessible, but also the usability. So it makes it easier for some elements. For example, people are giving a lot of effort to create a model or like some interactive dialogue, but there is actually a dialogue tag or an element that you can use for it, which make it way easier to implement and also for people to use it because it has like a native implementation. And then also for search engine optimization, that's a big point too. And they, actually I learned accessibility first from Google, so I think that it's a big point there for them too because they are crawling and then they can they will like try to find your heading 1, what's it about, how descriptive are the texts, and so on. So also, like always, the language is a big point, like the text you're using, of course, but the semantic does play a role there. First one. So the second one was, I was trying to remember the second one. What was like, give me one word.
The color matching.
All right, there are different tools you can use. You can just put color checker on Google, but there's like the WCAG one. There's also a plug or like a extension for that for Chrome. And if you look for material design, I think it has a new name now, material design. Or whatever, like, but you will find it material design. They have colors, and in that color they have like default accessible colors, but also you can look for different colors and they will tell you how accessible they actually are if you use that for the text and the other one for the background. But I usually use the one of the WCAG color contrast checker, and then you can just put I have that as a text and that as background. And the third one was the button. For icon buttons, right? If you put some image inside. Yeah. Yes. So if you have, let's say at the shopping cart one, you should, like you have that little, I don't even know, Einkauf. Shopping cart. Yeah, good job. It's late. Okay, so you have your button, you click on and you add something to the shopping cart. That's actually what you put in the area label if you have a button. So there are two things you can do depending on the image you have. I hope you have an SVG inside it. So if you have, you can probably say, okay, there's a thing that is called title, and you can link to that title inside the SVG and then describe just the SVG itself, like the add to shopping cart. And take care here of the button. It's different than with normal images. So normal images, you would describe what you see inside the context and so on. But with buttons, you describe what they do. So you wouldn't say shopping cart. I mean, it would still make sense here maybe. But there's another example. You have an icon with a heart. And you press the button and it says, or you come to the button and it says heart. And you're like, heart. But actually what it's doing is adding to favorites. So it should be, the labeling should be add to favorites. And yeah, so that's one approach to put a title at the SVG, but you can also put an area label at the button itself. So this will override the content inside it, and then you can say add to shopping cart in the label there.
Nice, sweet. Really good tips. Really cool. Okay. What do you think? One last question, Chewy?
I think there was one over there.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay, but Sabrina will be there later. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your talk. My question is, are you aware of any limitations of the Lighthouse tool? Or can I be sure that when I use it, it covers everything and I can say, hey, it's accessible in the end?
It doesn't cover everything because it cannot test or like audit everything. But what you can do is try it out, and it will tell you what you have to do on a test by yourself, actually. So it will give you feedback about, do you still have it here somewhere? So, no, oh yeah, here. You can see the past audits. So it will tell you what tasks it actually did, and tests it actually did, and which one you passed. And below that, there's a little section where it says, did not pass, is at the top, but and then it also says like you have to test these things on your own. I don't have a certain example right now. The tab order, for example, you cannot test that with Lighthouse. You have to test it yourself. And there's some other parts. They're also continuously working on that. So sometimes they improve some things or add some things, but yeah, it's not like you can be sure that it's really, really accessible, but some things you would need to take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Any further question? I think you can ask Sabrina, like right now in a couple of minutes. Because we would like to make one more short break before coming to our last topic today. Like not the topic, but the talk. And this will be really interesting because now we learned all of this, and then we're going to see how Daniel, where are you? There? implement this at a really big company. So I'm really excited for this, but till then, we have like a 10-ish minute, maybe a little shorter, 5-minute break, so we're not gonna be there too long. All right, thank you, Sabrina.
Geht los?
Yeah.
Okay, hello.
You get the proper intro.
Thanks.
So that's probably been our longest meetup in terms of content, but there's just so many cool parts of this topic we want to share with you. So next up is Daniel. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing like the real world data today with us from, it was Telecom, right? Nice, really excited, and thank you.
Okay. Thank you. In the last two talks we heard why it is important to have a focus on accessibility in your applications. So I'm glad that we at Talents in Görlitz had the chance to rebuild an existing application of the Telecom. It's called the Account Manager. Well, with a focus on accessibility and try to make it a better, more usable and more accessible place. So I'll talk about 3 topics today. What is the Account Manager? Then why we did all this, you all know already. And third one is how we did it, what was the process or challenges and learnings we had. Okay, what's this all about? Account Manager is basically a place where you can manage your account details, that is your usernames in your Telecom login, your user credentials, or set up and manage your two-factor authentication. We did a complete redesign of the UI and the user flow. We now have a modern UI, a better user experience, and we did use a Telecom internal component library. We also did some technical renovation. We split up a before monolithic app in a front-end and back-end side. And now we have a new front-end with an Angular single-page application and a big focus on usability and accessibility. So why we did all this? The situation before, it was a monolithic application with Spring and Java server faces using outdated technologies. It was slow and no one really cared for accessibility. So we wanted to change that. How to do it? We got the requirement, make account manager accessible. Oh, great, but okay, what should we do? Let's have a look. What we did is we cherry-picked what is relevant from the WCAG, that are guidelines explaining how to make websites accessible. And we made sure that all parts that took place in the redevelopment understood what we do and why we do. That is development, design, and stakeholders. This understanding is not necessarily on the same level, so it's just important that you have a basic understanding what to do and why it is important. We did define general rules in a design document. In talks before, I think it was also said for us it was Figma. So we have, for example, a rule: enrich titles for screen readers with context. Link titles for screen readers with context. You see here we have a link, it just says Ender for users with sight, but if you see the UI, you know, okay, that link is most favorable here in the context of this email address. And if you don't see this, you have to make this user of the screen reader understanding, okay, it's the context of this link is change the email address in the context of usernames. So we add a description for the screen reader to this link. If you do this, you have general rules. Of course, there are exceptions. It's important to mark all these exceptions that everyone knows, okay, we have, in this point, we have some customization. Okay, what did we do? Also, we use a scale design framework. That's a name. It's a telecom component library that brings us some web components that for itself support the level AA of the WCAG guidelines. And we had to make these components work together. So not only the components itself, but the whole thing, the page structure, interactions, flows, dynamic content on the page is also accessible. We made use for this from encapsulation. So we made our own accessible components based on the components the framework gave us, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. When we saw a problem, okay, for the user, and we had a solution for this, we put it in a component and are able to reuse it on other places of the website. Okay. Most important thing from my point of view is that we test with real users during development. So why we do this? We want to understand how they interact with the web page, understand their problems, and get the direct feedback from them, what would help them to make the website more accessible. So we had a huge variety of users with many disabilities. We had visual disabilities, reduced sight or blind users. We had users with cognitive problems or motoric problems. So we had many devices the users used. Some used keyboards, joystick, mouses, trackballs, magnifying glasses, really not on the operating system, but holding in their hand. And one user did also use a spoon to make inputs on his keyboard. It's really interesting. How did we do these real tests? We had multiple rounds of tests with internal users from the telecom and external users via an external company. And we first tested our designs or propositions, and afterwards, when we did some changes based on the feedback we got, we retested it if the changes we did help them to make the application more accessible. We always did workshops afterwards, so we could discuss the results and decide what we want to change and what what we want to leave. Because, as I said, we have a huge variety of users, tools, and preferences. And it was important to decide, okay, is this one remark we got, is it relevant for all of them, for all users, or would it be a consequence if we change something that for all other users it would be less usable, the web page? Okay, some lessons we learned. Just have a drink of water. We had general learnings. One important thing is to you have to try to make the experience of the website consistent the visible and non-visible experience of the website consistent, because every exception or customization you do, for example, just for screen readers, is a possible resource of a bug, because if you don't see it as a developer, it's hard to manage, and it's hard to recognize non-visible bugs. Next thing we learned is users are creative. So before we have a page in our application where the user has to interact with QR codes, and we were afraid, oh, blind users, can they use it? And yeah, just make sure the QR code is visible on the screen. And we we saw in the tests we did with the real users that, okay, if the user knows there's somewhere a QR code, he just takes his phone and tries to scan it. And not all of them managed it, but quite a big amount of users did manage to scan the code. If they have a manual or user had a problem with typing in manually on his keyboard, a solution for him was to copy and paste contents from his iPhone to MacBook, so he does not have to manually type in the code, but he can copy and paste it into the application. And the next learning is that you have always a constant improvement of your application. You never reach the point where you can say, okay, no, the whole application is accessible. We have 100% in Lighthouse, for example, and okay, now we're finished. You always have some input, and users tell you, okay, there's a barrier, you add more features, and always have to test these new features also, if they comply with the things you did before, and if the whole application as a whole is still accessible. Okay, we learned that making the app accessible is expensive, both in favor of cost and time, because you have to think of development, coordination between all the stakeholders. You have to test all this thing and retest it to prevent regression bugs. And you often have to decide, is there a generic solution for your problem, or you have some customized solution for this specific problem. Documentation is a big point. For every element that's basically on your website, we have to decide, is it visible for all users? You have to set an alt text, because it's important that also screen readers get the information that is visible or not. Should the element be focusable or not by every user, just per script? You have to think of the tab order that we had in the talk before. And maybe you have to add additional contents that is only hearable for screen reader users, but not visible. Okay, we learned different, we gained skills and understandings for users, guidelines, and technologies. We learned how to structure content, and it's really important that we have a semantic structure. And we learned that you cannot transmit the same amount of information in a sequential order per audio for screen readers as you do for visually, because you can transmit information in parallel mode. So that's an important point. If the context is not always visible for screen reader users, he can't remember all the web page around some element. So it's important that links, for example, have a specific text that is precise and the context link is appearing. I'll have an example later on. And last learning is to too long, didn't read. No one reads or even listens to long text. So it's important to have precise keywords so that screen reader users really fastly get what your content is about. Okay, now I have a demo of a test application. I hope it works. And I can present you some of the points with the screen reader running.
Tab, Google Chrome angeheftet.
It's too loud. It's not good. I just log in. Okay.
Login. Anmeldung nicht möglich. Mit dem Telekom.
Okay. Can I mute you? No. No, that's not what
Telekom
I wanted.
Login Google. Knusper aus. Knusper nicht. Passwort. Hauptsprungmarke.
Okay, let's have a look.
Willkommen bei NV.
No.
Okay,
Be quiet.
Login Daten.
Okay, so the first thing you see is we have a virtual cursor here. The screen reader, I can navigate with the keyboard and navigate through all elements on the web page. So I can, from top to down, I can tell the screen reader to read me out what is visible on the web page. So that's basically this virtual cursor of the screen reader.
0230Y Meetup.pptx auf diesem PC gespeichert, auf diesem PC gespeichert.
Okay. I'll just mute the screen reader because you can see the virtual cursor. So the next thing I want to show you is the importance of tab order. In this case, the most important thing in this element on the web page, you see the email address is ändern. We want to change it. Not the first thing we want the user to do is not to delete his email address, but to change it. So this is the first element we jump onto, even if the delete icon is above the change link. So that's about the tab order. I'll just give you an example. Okay, we can't hear it because he's muted. But if you have a look at the copy text on the top of the page, and I go back with the screen reader to it, you will hear that he reads out additional information. That is to give the user more information that is important in his context.
Die Benutzerdaten für Ihren Telekom-Login bestehen aus Benutzername und Passwort. Sie können bis zu Benutzernamen hinterlegen, eine Telekom-E-Mail-Adresse, eine E-Mail-Adresse eines anderen.
Okay, you hear additional text that it's not visible, so the screen reader user can understand what's the context of the whole page and does not have to scroll through all elements to understand what's going on. Okay, let's have a last look.
Passwörter Registerkarte 3 von 3. Ausgewählt. Weitere Passwörter Eigenschaftsseite Liste mit 2 Einträgen anklickbar. Passwort für
Another thing you have to keep in mind if you have just be quiet. If you have dynamic content on your page, if you see that it's obvious, okay, no, something appeared on the page, but for the screen reader, you have to add specific text so the screen reader user gets the information if something new appears on the screen. So I just link on this, I just click.
Sich zukünftig nur noch mit dem neuen sind alle Ziffern von 0 bis 9, alle Buchstaben des deutschen Alphabets und die folgenden Sonderzeichen, Ausrufezeichen, Rautezeichen, $, Prozent, kaufmännische.
Okay, just be quiet. You saw I clicked the link and the screen reader instantly started to read out the text in the pop-up that flied out. Another thing we had to do here is to for the screen reader only, especially. No. Add specific text to all these special characters, because without it, Some of the text wouldn't be read out from screen readers in the standard mode, in default mode, so we added explicit text to read out Ausrufezeichen, hash mark, dollar, or for example the big S in the German, scharfes S in the German alphabet. That's not all screen readers would read out. And another important thing here for visual users, the characters you see here are separated by colons, and if we leave it just like that, the screen reader would also read out the colons, but that's no signs we want to allow for the password. So also here we had to add special text just for the screen reader. So we have a difference between the thing the screen reader reads out and visual users are seeing. Okay, and so I think that was the last example here. Okay, one just last important point I want to mention. If you have single page applications like we did with this new UI for the account manager, it's important that the user gets the information when pages change. So what we did is we set a focus on the heading here. So on every page change, the screen reader automatically reads out, for example, in this example, password ändern. So the screen reader user knows, okay, I'm now on a new page and what's the context I'm now in. Okay, so basically that's the demo and I'm open for questions.
Questions? Yes. Hi, great talk. You mentioned you're using Telecom's design system. How much of the accessibility features, or do you know if how many of the accessibility features were covered by the design system, and how many like your team had to build on top of, or was it already provided to you and you kind of implemented it?
Okay, it depends. The design system, the framework gave us the opportunity to fill in some information. For example, for we had this card element here. Oh, I'll just try to open it. Go back. It won't work. Okay, so we have the card element here, and we have the possibility to add. Well, to insert, for example, icons in this place, and the opportunity to set attributes, so we can actively decide what the screen reader reads out when focusing on this element. So as we heard before, it would make no sense to hear trash icon or something like that. So that's why we're glad that the scale framework, for example, gave us the opportunity to put in here some additional text for screen reader. So it's not only the title that pops up when hovering the element, but the screen reader also reads out, okay, that's, if you click here, it will delete your password for email programs. So it's a mixture of I would say 50% is from the framework itself, and the rest we have to make it work in the combination of all components.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the talk. It was really good to see the application also in the end. I was wondering about the QR code you were mentioning. Like for people who are having motorical problems, did you test that as well? And how did they actually manage to?
Yeah, so it's not just the QR code, we have alternatives. Okay. It's not the only possibility to enter it. That's also a good point. So they always provide multiple ways to achieve the user's goal. So what we did is, I don't know if I can show it here in the test system, but he also has a possibility to type in, or as one user did, copy in the code, a text string and paste it into his QR code application. That is one possible solution. Or another thing is just don't use the QR code and the time-based password, but just use SMS OTP, SMS-based password. So that's also the preference of many users. We got as a result of the UX test. They said, no, I wouldn't bother with the QR code and the TOTP, it's too complicated. If I have the alternative using SMS OTP, then I just take that, and that's also good for us.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's what I was wondering about, if you have alternative instead of that. And the other question I have is about the testing groups you had. How did you find people where you could how did you do the testing? How did you reach out to people to find someone to actually test them?
Okay, as I said, we had two parts of testing. One was telecom internal, so we have in telecom some workers with sight disabilities or motoric disabilities, and we just asked them, are you willing to help us to make the application better? And they said yes, so we used them. And the other part was working together with an external company that was, I don't know how they did it, but they have the possibility to get this kind of people and help us
that's interesting.
to make it work for them. Yeah.
Do you know their name of the company?
Mike, what's Custom Interaction? Yes, Custom Interactions.
You mentioned before that it was very important to get all the stakeholders on the table. I'm afraid that a lot of project managers are expecting accessibility to be something that is just a layer on top on your UI. But right now it sounds like you had to completely rewrite the whole project, right?
Okay, that was not the only motivation to make it accessible, but the management decided, okay, we want to redesign, we want a new modern layout, and that was the point where we had the possibility to do that.
So you're already so basically my question is just, if you are facing with that challenge and your customer is expecting it to be easy, are there any tips that you can give on how to lay out a roadmap so that your customers are not running off?
It's a good question.
Because the complexity seems to be there, and I think
just make them understand that it's nothing special about accessibility. It's the same as the same rules apply for everything in software development. The later you decide to change something or to put something on existing stuff, the more it costs and the more complicated it is. So the best thing is to think from the start and build from scratch the right thing.
Okay, thanks.
Another question? Yeah, right behind.
Maybe we can write a different UI version, such like the dark mode or light mode and the blind mode. Maybe we can write. Is it make sense? For example, we can put the bigger icon, or maybe we can change the contrast.
Okay, that's not possible in this application right now, but you have, I know that users with disabilities are using their operating system or external tools to navigate through the web, so it's nothing, in my point of view, you must provide with your application to change the contrast, because the users already have tools for that and are using them. Of course, it's possible, and you can add some mechanical functions to provide even better user experience. For example, by making the font size bigger with a button click in the application. But that's just like an add-on to the application. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Will you also be staying a little longer for questions that may come up?
No problem.
All right. So that was it. Thanks for bearing with us for so long. It's 9. That's crazy, but still we're gonna have an hour for you to network and hang out here a little bit more. Also, I got some questions regarding the next events and conferences, so there's just a quick update. Our next meetup will be in 2 weeks. It's the 7th, so we're going to celebrate International Women's Day a little early, so one day before the actual day, at the Google office. And then 2 weeks after that, it's the 23rd, right? It's your Meetup. Florentina and her company are gonna tell us a lot about Flutter. So if you're interested in Flutter, definitely check out the event after the next one. And then I got some questions regarding the conference. It's nowhere published yet, so we're gonna start publishing it next week or the week after, and then you'll also be able to buy tickets for that. But if you have questions, you can always tell me. Write me a text on LinkedIn or wherever. All right, thank you. So enjoy. We still have some snacks and drinks. Thank you.